So playing through Resident Evil Code Veronica, we've definitely been introduced to some interesting characters, but one really stood out from the rest. Because playing as the secondary antagonist of this game, you think that his presence and actions would be pretty minimal, but in all reality, his constant threat during this game was very palpable, even more so compared to the actual main antagonist of this game, Alexia Ashford.
It is almost time, you genetically inferior siblings.
Because in today's episode of Explaining Evil, we'll cover the insane, the psychopathic sister-loving villain of RE Code Veronica, which would be the self-proclaimed noble Alfred Ashford.
I am Alfred Ashford, son of Alexander Ashford.
In which we follow his story alongside his twin sister Alexia, where we explain his origins, his family lineage and creation, and his eventual mental breakdown that we saw in this game. So sit back and relax as we delve into the psychopathic mind of Alfred Ashford.
Ready? Let the game begin!
So just as a quick heads up, I did cover his twin sister Alexia in a previous Explaining Evil episode, so if you guys want more information on her, then watch that video after this so you guys have a good general scope of what these two lunatics were up to. Anyways, back to Alfred. Like his sister Alexia, he was born into, or more so created, into this once renowned Ashford family, being known to be part of the elite European aristocracies for many generations back, with Veronica Ashford, the ancestral matriarch of this family, known for her beauty and intelligence, raising her family name to prominence. It just makes you wonder what happened that made the once illustrious name of the Ashfords fall from grace. Well, prior to Alfred's birth, we find out that Alexander Ashford, Alexia's and Alfred's father, did not hold up his family's reputation. This was even made worse when his father, Edward Ashford, who was famously known to be a co-founder of the Umbrella Corporation, died due to some suspicious circumstances. And the other co-founders of Umbrella would surely take this opportunity to grab more power in Edward's absence. So now left with no choice, Alexander had to figure out a way to hold power within the Umbrella Corporation and keep his family's name in prominence. Because after losing his father Edward, the other co-founders of Umbrella would eventually take full control of this company, rendering the Ashfords as second fiddle if Alexander doesn't come up with any significant breakthrough with the company's experimental progenitor virus research. And what's more, unlike his father Edward, who specialized in virology, Alexander focused more in biogenetics. This specialty though would come in handy for him with his upcoming plan of bringing back pride and prominence to his family name, because he came up with an idea of reviving his late ancestor Veronica, which in his mind would help bring back power back to the Ashfords. Well, in order to do this so-called revival, he first had to conduct some research into the intelligence gene, which he documented in a file called the Veronica Report, stating, "After many long years of research, I finally identified the inheritance element that administers intelligence of man. I even succeeded in manipulating the absolute value of intelligence artificially by recomposing the base alignment of the element. I then sampled the gene of our great ancestor, manipulated its element, then implanted it into an unfertilized egg of a surrogate mother. What I didn't expect was that twins, a boy and a girl, were born. The boy had higher intelligence than normal, but not high enough for him to be considered a genius. However, the girl had unmatched intelligence that was easily allowed her to be classified as a genius. She was exactly what I had been looking for, the revival of our great ancestor. I already determined their names, the girl's name Alexia, and the boy's name Alfred. I'm certain that Alexia will elevate the name of the Ashford family to extreme glory." Well, after reading that, the key takeaways would be the birth of both Alexia Ashford and Alfred Ashford. But unfortunately for Alfred, he didn't gain genius level intellect like his sister. Instead, it was said that he did have an above average intelligence. So with that said, the Ashford twins were born, and it was said by their father Alexander that Alexia would eventually bring back pride to the Ashford name. which she did because before becoming a teenager, she already graduated from a prestigious university and was already employed as one of the top researchers of the Umbrella Corporation, and was even conducting her own virulent experiments on the side, which would be an important factor for both Alfred and their father Alexander. But more on that soon, because as we continue to read through some of the story files from Code Veronica, we learn that Alfred and Alexia would find out about their artificial birth. This would cause resentment towards their father Alexander. Eventually, the twins used him for their sick experiment and injected him with an experimental variant strain that Alexia was working on at the time, turning their father into the hideous poison-creating monster. So with this data, Alexia found it possible to harness the power from this newly developed virus of hers, naming it the T Veronica virus. But in order for her not to become a mindless monster like her father once infected, she had to put herself into cryostasis for at least 15 years in order for her to assimilate with the virus. So now this has Alfred in the main spotlight because as the last remaining Ashford, that is until his sister reawakens, he would live a life of loneliness and subpar standard to what was expected of him. Now having him relocated on one of the Umbrella Corporation's bases, Rockford Island. Here he would mention that he was the commander of this base. But even though being in the higher ops, much more was brewing in the background for Alfred, which we can have some recounts from the countless files that explains his current situation, starting with the Butlers No, which states, "Sir Alfred, please forgive me, as I must tell you of my abrupt departure by leaving this letter. I first served your father, Lord Alexander, and have for so long shared in the joys and sorrows of the Ashford family. Lord Alexander disappeared unexpectedly 15 years ago. Then an accident during an experiment took the life of our dear Alexia. You were forced to become the master of the family at a very young age, and nearly lost your sanity from the sorrow of having lost all of your family members at once. There was nothing I can do, and I felt powerless. I first thought I should kill myself to apologize. Then I realized it would be an insult to our dear Lord Alexander and Alexia in the other world." Well, upon reading that, it reaffirms his loneliness and his fragile mental state after Alexia's self-induced cryostasis for 15 years. And of course, his love for his sister comes off borderline inappropriate, especially with the way he worships her. With his confession letter to her makes it even more apparent on how he feels for his sister, which reads, "Alexia, my sister, is a genius and possesses unmatched beauty. She is everything to me. I would overcome any obstacle and be willing to risk my life for her. For Alexia, I must revive the glorious Ashford family, which fell during the era of my father Alexander. Together, we will restore our family name. Once that's achieved, I'll build a palace where only nobles may gather. I cannot allow the unwashed to see my dear Alexia, to whom my life is devoted to. She reigns the world as queen, with I as her servant. That is my dream, and how sweet it will be. Those accomplishments will be the proof of my love towards Alexia. It is the purpose of my existence. All other people are meaningless, and they shall soon prostrate themselves before Alexia and I, devoted to my beloved Alexia, Alfred Ashford." So after reading that, the foundation to the villain we saw from Resident Evil Code Veronica was born, because quickly we realized his perception of nobility due to his heritage of being an Ashford, his lack of importance within the Umbrella Corporation, and now having him as a supervisor role of a remote Umbrella Island, and the lack of any other family members at this time. We're introduced to an already crazed version of Alfred, with his self-proclaimed grandiose of his standing, welcoming Claire Redfield in his own way, and showing clear signs of mental deterioration and paranoia, blaming Claire for the attack on the island and the eventual infection of the people within it with the T-virus. Well, at this point, it comes to no surprise that Alfred's insanity continues to grow, because both recounts of storytelling for Code Veronica would have him conversating with his sister Alexia at their creepy estate in the subsection of the island.
I feel like this year may be special. Don't you, Alexia? It's almost like there's something I'm forgetting.
My dear Alfred, please be easy on yourself. Why don't you set down your burdens and play a game with me?
You're right, Alexia. Since you've come back, I've never been this happy.
This of course is a direct contrast to what we stated with Alexia and her sleep for 15 years. But it all makes sense once Claire and Steve Burnside investigates more into what Alfred was doing all this time, because shortly after, we are introduced to Alexia and have a small confrontation with her.
Claire Redfield, hold it right there. We meet each other at last. A pity I must say goodbye so soon. I am Alexia Ashford. For the pride of the Ashford family, I will kill you.
This of course was a prelude to a huge revelation about Alfred, because due to his loneliness and longing for his sister, it's revealed that he started to dress as Alexia herself, mimicking the way she talks and her mannerisms.
Shit! A wig. So Alfred was playing two roles all by himself.
He couldn't bear the fact that his sister was dead.
Clearly displaying dissociative identity disorder, or DID, also formerly known as multiple personality disorder. And looking more into DID and how that pertains with Alfred, it is stated in multiple research studies that a person with DID is usually manifested due to some traumatic or painful experiences earlier in their childhood. The pain of someone with DID is a coping mechanism to dissociate themselves from that said pain or trauma. In this case for Alfred, we knew his infatuation with his sister Alexia and showing clear signs of boundless love and worship for her, compounded with the fact that he discovered his artificial birth early in his childhood and losing his sister for 15 years due to her experiment. All this would be a prerequisite to what caused Alfred to impersonate his own sister, and the fact that he was completely unaware of his actions, even conversing with Alexia. But this mental break would be magnified when Alfred himself realizes that he's been doing this his whole time, with the revelation of his twin sister actually only being a manifestation of his imagination.
So there never was an Alexia after all.
You mean he thinks he's two people? Okay, that's it. Let's get out of here.
But playing through Resident Evil Code Veronica, we continue to deal with Alfred and his crazy antics for a little bit more. And funny enough, during this time, he still talks in a persona of Alexia, even without his dress, indicating that possibly he may have permanently have DID, even if Alexia was awakened.
I will not allow you fools to escape. This is what you get for trying to oppose me. Now feel my revenge.
But lastly, depending on which version of Code Veronica we follow, the reawakening of Alexia was imminent, and in one recount, Alfred would be shown some pity by Alexia once she's awake. But in the Dark Side Chronicles version, Alexia would be the one to end her own brother's life, stopping this insanity of Alfred once and for all.
I had a brother once too. He really wasn't much fun. He couldn't even wake me up on time. But I've released him of all his responsibilities.
Anyways, what did you guys think about Alfred Ashford and his insane antics and impersonation of his twin sister Alexia? Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Also, please feel free to comment on which character I should cover in the next episode of Explaining Evil, and it doesn't particularly have to be a Resident Evil character as well. Anyways, I do hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Explaining Evil featuring Alfred Ashford, and as always, you guys have a great rest of your day, and this is Hey Deva, and I'll see you guys on the next video.
Welcome, Claire. Consider the area you are in a special playground I have prepared just for you. Please try and keep me amused, and do not disappoint me by dying too soon. I so want to enjoy this.